always follow. When Anton moved into the building, he instantly disliked the stairwell. Old, soaked in the smell of mold and rust, it felt like it was hiding something. Peeling walls, flickering ceiling lights that blinked like tired eyes. The neighbors, shadows that only appeared when you weren't looking. The elevator worked on its own terms, so Anton usually took the stairs. And every time he felt someone was walking behind him, quiet, matching his pace, half a step behind. At first he thought it was just an echo, until one day he stopped and heard one more step that wasn't his. He thought maybe it was paranoia, until he noticed the door on the fourth floor. It blended into the wall. No number, no handle, same faded paint as the concrete. One night he heard laughter from behind it, children's laughter, soft like tissue paper tearing. He asked the neighbors. One woman frowned and said, "What door? There are only 3 apartments on that floor." But Anton had seen it. He'd walk past it every day. He had even heard it breathe. The stairwell didn't let go of him. The steps behind him continued even when he walked faster. Slower. Didn't matter. Once he tried recording it with his phone. The steps were there, faint but clear. But when he played the video back, there was nothing. Only him, climbing alone. Then came the elevator games. The panel would light up on its own. It stopped at the 4th floor every time, even if he was going to the 3rd or 5th. The doors would open to an empty hall, but the air inside the elevator would grow cold and feel crowded. Once, the mirrored interior showed a second reflection. It looked like him, but it didn't blink. The hallway light outside his apartment blew out one night and never came back. The landlord promised to fix it. He never did. One evening, Anton saw a shadow through his peephole, a silhouette standing perfectly still in the dark. He waited. 10 minutes. An hour. When he finally opened the door, there was a footprint. Small, barefoot, wet. That night he dreamed of the 4th floor door. Only now it had a handle, and it was open. Inside, a staircase. Going down. Endlessly. He woke up with dust on his shoes. Anton tried moving out, packed in silence. Never took the stairs again. But on his last day, when the elevator doors opened on the 4th floor again, there was a light behind that door. A single swinging bulb, and the sound of breathing. Fast, as if whatever was inside had been waiting. That night at his new place in another city, Anton unpacked the last box. At the bottom was a doormat. He didn't own a doormat. It was the one from outside his old apartment. The lights flickered. Someone knocked on the door 12 times, one for each step he took, when he should have never turned around. Anton didn't open the door that night. He stood there, frozen, counting the knocks again in his head. 12, each one slower than the last, like something tired or ancient. He didn't sleep. He didn't move. Just watched the door until dawn. When the sun finally rose, he crept closer. Looked through the peephole. No one. But the doormat was gone, and in its place, a small gray shoe, soaked and moldy, pointed toward his door. The same kind he remembered seeing years ago, when he was a child, the same ones he used to wear. He called his mother later that day, trying to shake it off as stress. She sounded distant. "Honey," she said carefully, you sure you're not sleepwalking again?" Anton froze. "What do you mean again?" "You used to do that when you were little. We caught you trying to open the door in the middle of the night. You'd whisper something about the stairs." "What did I say?" She paused. That someone was waiting below. That night the door knocked again, but this time it didn't stop at 12. It kept going. 13, 14, 15. Anton backed away. The floor beneath his feet creaked, not like wood, but like concrete shifting. And then he heard it. A second knock. From inside the apartment. Behind him. He turned. Another door had appeared on the far wall. No handle. Just that same peeling paint. Anton stared at the second door. It hadn't been there before. It couldn't have been. His apartment was a studio. 1 room, 1 bathroom, no tricks. but now it loomed on the far wall, faintly pulsing like it breathed. A whisper came from it, low, slow, like words dragged across sand. "Come finish the climb." He stepped back. The knocks on the front door had stopped. Silence. Then, the sound of keys turning in his lock. He didn't move. The front door creaked open, but no one walked in, only cold air. And something else, the sound of barefoot steps walking past him, across the apartment, straight to the second door. The sound paused, then it unlatched. From the inside. Anton screamed and grabbed the lamp nearest to him, hurling it toward the second door. It shattered against the wall and the door vanished. Not closed, not hidden, gone. But on the wall where it stood, 5 wet handprints, small, child-sized, dripping. He left the apartment that night, didn't pack, didn't turn off the lights, just ran. He checked into a motel 2 towns over, paid in cash, and slept with the lights on. The next morning, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message, a photo, of his apartment door with a note taped to it, in red marker. "Come back down, we're still playing." Anton didn't answer the message. He turned off the phone, bought a new one, changed cities again. Weeks passed, months. He thought it was over, until one night in a different apartment, far away from anything familiar, he came home and found something wedged in his doorframe. A crumpled drawing, wax crayon, torn notebook paper, faded and damp. A stairwell, 12 steps, and on the last step, a stick figure with a red circle for a face, and next to it, a smaller one, labeled "You." Anton didn't sleep that night, but when dawn came, he breathed easier, until he turned toward the bathroom mirror and saw his own reflection staring past him. At the wall behind, another door, no handle, just waiting. The 8th floor. Dan moved into the building in early September. Cheap rent, quiet neighbors, old but well kept. That's what the landlord promised. And it was all true, except for one thing. There was no 8th floor. Officially, the elevator went from 1 to 7. The staircase went from 1 to 7. Every tenant said the same. There is no 8th floor. But every night at exactly 2:08 a.m., Dan heard footsteps above his ceiling. Slow, steady, like someone walking barefoot on wet concrete. He lived on the 7th. At first, he assumed it was the pipes, maybe the roof, but the sound moved back and forth in circles, sometimes stopping directly over his bed. He climbed to the roof one night. Nothing. Flat, empty, locked from the outside. Still the walking continued. Until one night, Dan stood under the ceiling and whispered, "Who's there?" The footsteps paused, then started again. Faster. Curious, he returned to the stairwell and started counting. He passed the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, then something strange. Another flight of stairs, no label, no sign, just an unmarked concrete step, continuing up into a dark landing. He climbed, and at the top, a metal door. Dusty, locked, cold. But behind it, he could hear breathing. He pressed his ear to it, and someone on the other side whispered back, "You shouldn't be here." Next day, he asked his neighbor, an old man with a crooked spine and yellow teeth, "Is there an 8th floor?" The man didn't blink. "There used to be." Dan frowned. "Why then? What happened?" The old man looked toward the ceiling. "They sealed it after the fire." "Fire?" "Long time ago, before I moved in. Kids used to play there. Someone opened a door that wasn't meant to open." Dan asked, "And then?" The old man smiled, but his eyes didn't. "Someone's still playing." Dan couldn't sleep that night. The ceiling above him thudded softly, then tapping, like a child's fingers. He turned on music. Didn't help. The tapping matched the rhythm. He knocked on the ceiling once. Silence. Then the knock came again from his front door. Dan checked the peephole. Nothing. But the doorknob was cold. He opened it. The hallway was dark. The light bulb above had burnt out for the first time since he moved in. But on the floor outside, wet footprints, small, bare, leading up to his door, and on his doormat, scratched in what looked like rust. Come up. Dan didn't sleep the rest of that night. He sat by the door watching the hallway through the peephole. The lights never came back on. The footprints outside slowly faded, as if they were being absorbed by the floor. By morning, he convinced himself it was some twisted prank, until he opened his fridge. Inside, in the place where he kept drinks, was a photo, an old, faded Polaroid. It showed a boy standing in a stairwell. The boy had no face, but in the bottom corner was a handwritten date, September 9, 1982. The photo was warm to the touch. Dan started asking around. Most tenants avoided him now, except for one woman on the sixth floor. Quiet, pale, always wearing gloves. She listened without speaking. When he mentioned the footsteps, she looked up and said, "Don't count them." He blinked. "Count what?" "The steps. If you ever go up again, don't count." She closed her door without another word. Of course, Dan went up again. He waited until 2:08 a.m. This time, he didn't stop at the seventh floor. He climbed the extra steps slowly and found the same door. Only now it was open. Not wide, just cracked, like an invitation. Inside was darkness, cold, still air, and the distant sound of a music box. He stepped through. The hallway inside was wrong, too narrow. The lights buzzed but didn't light anything properly. The air smelled like burnt plastic. He walked slowly. On the wall, charred children's drawings melted from heat. A crayon scrawl read, "Play with us." One door was ajar. He pushed it open. Inside, a burned room, furniture scorched, walls blackened, and in the center, a circle of melted plastic toys, all facing outward. In the center of the circle, a tiny pair of shoes, still smoldering. Dan backed away, bumped into someone. He turned, but no one was there, only the sensation of fingers brushing his neck. He ran, down the hallway, down the stairs. Except they didn't end. Floor after floor, no exit, no markings. He tried to scream, but the air swallowed it. The stairwell began to stretch, and the whispering began again. Finally, he burst through a door, into his own apartment, exactly as he left it. Only now his walls were covered in photographs. All the same boy, standing in stairwells, doorways, corners, sometimes behind other tenants, sometimes behind Dan. His phone buzzes. New photo message. No number. He opened it. It was a picture of him, asleep in bed, taken from above. The timestamp? 2:08 a.m. Dan stared at the photo on his phone. Himself, asleep, timestamped at 2:08 a.m. He hadn't slept. He hadn't even been in bed. He dropped the phone, the screen shattered. But behind the crack, the image changed. It wasn't his apartment anymore. It was the stairwell, dark, cold, and at the bottom, a door. He looked back up. His apartment door was gone. The hallway was gone. Everything was gone, except stairs. He turned. The stairwell stretched up and down into darkness. No signs, no markings, just him. And a child's voice, faint, echoing from below. "You broke the rules." Dan stepped back, but a wall had formed behind him. Only one direction remained, down. He walked. Each step was slower. He couldn't feel his feet anymore. The lights above faded. Below, a flickering glow pulsed, like something breathing. He passed drawings carved into the walls, stick figures, circles for eyes. One showed a man falling endlessly through stairs, labeled Dan. He reached the bottom. There was a mirror, just a single cracked mirror, hung crooked on a cement wall. He looked into it and saw himself, but younger, 9 years old, wearing the same clothes as the boy in the photographs. In the reflection, his younger self smiled, slowly, and whispered, "Told you we'd play again." The mirror shattered. Behind it, a door, the same door from the 8th floor, and this time Dan walked through it. The next morning, a new tenant moved into the 7th floor. He asked the landlord about the building. "Any weird stuff? Ghost stories?" The landlord chuckled. Nah, just creaky pipes and old wood. But, he added, don't bother with the stairs. Elevator's easier. The tenant nodded, then frowned. He was sure he'd just heard footsteps above. Horror story. It had been empty for years. Everyone in the building knew it. Apartment 306, sealed after the last tenant was taken out in pieces. No one spoke about it. The landlord never rented it. But last Thursday, the door was wide open. Sasha lived directly across the hall. She knew something was off the moment she came home. There was no sound. Normally, the hallway buzzed. Radios, babies, creaky floorboards. But that evening, silence. Dense and sticky. She passed the open doorway and glanced in. Darkness, except for the blinking of an old TV screen. Black and white static. But there was no power in that apartment. At 3:06 a.m., her doorbell rang. She didn't move. She stared through the peephole. No one was there. But the light in apartment 306, which had been off, was now on, and the TV was showing something. A staircase. Old, narrow, wet. Sasha blinked. The camera moved, slowly as if someone were walking down. Then it stopped at a door, a number on it, 302, her apartment. She slammed her door shut and locked every bolt. But the TV across the hall kept playing. She heard footsteps, not in the hallway but above her ceiling, circling again and again. And then the scratching started. Not at her door, from inside her wall. By morning, 306 was sealed shut again. No one had seen it open. No one believed her. Until the neighbor next door vanished. Then another. Only Sasha remembered the TV. Only she heard the scratching. A week later, she packed her bags. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. As she stepped out, she noticed a new name on apartment 306, freshly painted in red. S. Petrovna. Her own. But she never told anyone her full name. Before she could run, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message. You're home now. She turned. The hallway stretched, longer than it should, and at the far end, just barely visible in the flickering light, a child, standing, smiling, holding a broken TV remote. And behind him, every door slowly opening. The hallway lights exploded one by one. Each burst of flickering light brought the child closer. Closer, until he stood inches from her face. His smile wasn't childlike anymore. His mouth stitched shut, the skin sewn with black wire. But he was still grinning, not with but with permission, as if someone else was speaking through him. In his hand, the TV remote. He lifted it and clicked. Sasha blinked. She was back in her apartment. Morning light spilled across the kitchen. The kettle whistled cheerfully. The TV played a static-filled weather report. Everything was normal. She stood, shaken, but awake, alive. Maybe it was all a dream. She laughed, a breathless, broken sound, shuffled toward the bathroom, heart still pounding. She stopped by the mirror. In it, she didn't see herself. She saw the hallway, long, warped, endless, and deep inside it, walking toward the camera, another version of her, barefoot, eyes open too wide, chin pale and flickering like a weak signal. She turned around, nothing behind her, looked back at the mirror. The hallway was now empty, except for one thing, the child, sitting, watching, holding the remote. He clicked again. The lights in her apartment dimmed, the windows blacked out. The TV turned on by itself, a grainy image, her front door. Someone was standing on the other side, breathing. She ran to the peephole. No one. But on the screen, the figure raised its hand, knocked, 3 times. Sasha screamed. She backed away, but the walls began to change. The paint peeled away to reveal drawings underneath, dozens of them. All of her, sleeping, crying, standing, watching. One of them showed her sitting in apartment 306, smiling. The floor trembled. The hallway stretched open behind her, swallowing her apartment like melting film. At the end of it, a single flickering neon sign that hadn't been there before. It read, "Welcome back." When the landlord opened the hallway a few days later, the doors were all as they should be, except one. Apartment 30X was gone. Not locked, not sealed, just missing, as if no one had ever lived there. But at 3:06 a.m., the tenants still sometimes hear a TV click on behind the wall, and sometimes a knock. Enjoy the unease? Leave a like, hit subscribe, and we'll keep digging up the things they tried to forget.